Today's public hearing of the Prosecutor Vetting Commission. My name is Christopher Lehman, Chairperson of the Commission, and I declare this session to be open. Our commission was established under Law 252 on the external evaluation of judges and prosecutors. Article 22, paragraph 13 of that law provides that this commission will assess candidates for the Superior Council of Prosecutors Selection and Evaluation Board according to the procedures and criteria regulated by Law Number 26, 2022, on measures related to the selection of candidates for the position of members in the self-administration bodies of the prosecutors. The hearing is being conducted under the Commission's rules of procedures for evaluations under Law Number 26 of 2022. The subject of today's hearing is Valeriu Sirbu, a candidate for the Superior Council of Prosecutors Selection and Evaluation Board. Mr. Sirbu, welcome. I will note for the record that Commissioner Nadia Hryptievsky is recused by a decision of the Commission of 21 May. The four other commissioners joining me today are Virginia Marraro, the Vice Chair of the Commission, along with Ermontis Mikolonis, Saskia DeVries, and Cornel Lebedinsky. The Commission is also assisted by members of its Secretariat. This hearing is open to the public and members of the media. The hearing will be conducted with interpretation into Romanian and English. To allow for accurate interpretation, I advise everyone to please speak slowly and clearly. These proceedings are being recorded. The recordings of the Commission's public hearings will be available online on the Commission's website within 3 days after the hearing. Mr. Sirbu, during the hearing, one or more members of the Commission will ask questions to you. Please answer them truthfully and completely. Your explanations and answers are important to the Commission in verifying your financial and ethical integrity. In formulating our questions, we will take into account your privacy and, where required and possible, privacy of your family members and close persons. So we will leave out any unnecessary details relating to ID numbers, bank account numbers, specific addresses of real estate, and the like. And for your protection and your privacy, we would ask that you do the same in answering the questions. At the end of the hearing, you'll be given an opportunity to make a brief closing statement. I'll start by briefly reviewing the evaluation process for this candidate. The Commission initiated its evaluation process on the 22nd of December, 2023, by notifying him by email and asking him to complete and return an ethics questionnaire and a financial declaration form. Valeriu Sirbu returned the completed questionnaire and declarations on the 29th of December, 2023. As part of the subject's evaluation, the Commission also obtained information from many other sources, such as the National Integrity Authority, the State Fiscal Service, the General Inspectorate of the Border Police, and other public institutions, as well as financial institutions and open sources. The Commission assesses the information it obtains from these sources for relevance and reliability. The Commission also sent you 3 rounds of questions on the 11th of April, 2024, the 29th of May, 2024, and the 2nd of August of 2024, all of which you responded to. On the 2nd of October of this year, 2024, the Commission invited you to attend today's public hearing. At that time, we notified you of the specific topics that would be addressed at the hearing today. Mr. Sirbu, again, thank you for appearing today. I'll begin with just a few questions of my own for you. I ask that you respond in a complete and truthful manner to each of these questions. First, let me ask if you wish to make any additions or corrections to the answers that you previously provided to the Commission in our request for information.
Good afternoon, esteemed members of the Commission, esteemed Chairman of the Commission. Well, actually, I would like to clarify that I understood that there were 3 rounds, but actually there were 4 rounds of questions and answers. And I have provided additional documentation materials as part of the 4th round, I think on the 8th of October, that is. And I hope all of that information is there. And after I have received the case file in electronic format, after that, I have informed the Commission about the fact that certain documents that were annexed, that some of them had actually nothing to do with me and nothing to do with persons close to me. And also I highlighted that some documents were missing that were actually on the list of materials in the case file. And this happened yesterday, and I hope the members of the Commission, I'm not sure there is anyone to confirm that if you have the documentation that I mentioned, to avoid reiterating what I've already written and submitted. Otherwise, in addition to what I've already shared with the Commission, there's nothing else to add but what I've just said.
Note that 4th round of questions was sent and answered for the record. Let me also ask if you have any, we have your answers to the 5-year declaration and ethics questionnaire that was returned on the 29th of December, 2023. And I'd like to ask if those documents remain accurate as of today.
Certainly, all the information that I've submitted continues to be accurate to this day, with some little additions. That there is some information that I wasn't aware of, for instance, at the time of the 1st stage of questions or the second round. So I provided some further information along the way. But at the end of the day, the information that I've shared with the Commission was absolutely accurate and real, actual.
Thank you, Mr. Sirbu. At this point, I am going to pass the floor to Commission Member Saskia de Vries.
Thank you. And to put your mind at rest, we have received all your information. We have also received your letter with the remarks and we on what is missing or what is not relevant. The one, I think you sent it yesterday? Yeah. You will get an answer on that as well, an official answer. So, I'm going to discuss 4 topics with you, Mr. Sirbu. And sometimes I will give an introduction, and I will ask, and then I will ask you some questions. So the first topic is the source of funds for the donations that you received from your relatives, which have been disclosed by you in your annual declarations. And you have declared a substantial amount of donation. It was a big number from your relatives, your family and your wife's family, and which you have declared in your asset declarations over the last years, and the last one that we have is 22. You have stated that the money was sent to you through bank transfers, but also via friends traveling from Belgium to Moldova. But also when your relatives came to visit Moldova, they also gave you money. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah. The Commission did a detailed analysis of your relatives' income and bank accounts to determine whether they were able to make those donations to you, and taken into consideration that they had living costs, of course, and other expenses in Belgium. Not all the financial data of your relatives over the years that they donated money were complete. We have asked you for additional information, which was sent by you and which was very helpful. We thank you for that. It answered most of the questions of the Commission, but there are a few questions left over the donations that you received from your mother-in-law over 2013, 2014 and 2019. And we took into account especially your comment that those donations were made out of the cash withdrawals that your daughter-in-law made in Belgium. I will give you our questions on the 3 years, And if you can answer them straight away, that would be fine. But if you say, I need a little bit more time to answer it, I will send them to you later as written questions. So the first year that we have questions on is 2013. Your mother-in-law had, according to the financial data, an income of approximately 9,700 euros, and she donated almost all of it to your family. We have no information on her expenses, but like I said, basically she donated the income that she had in the bank at that time. What is your reaction on that?
I have annexed to the last round of questions, I've annexed the explanations that are due for this matter. And in terms of a confirmation or an explanation from my mother-in-law, well, she confirmed that she submitted to me, for me to then submit to the Commission information on some of her income to prove the fact that at that time she was in Belgium and she was also working in Belgium. However, she didn't want to provide me with information on all of her income because in the past, a colleague, a judge who was before the Vetting Commission, and he stated that his parents have worked informally, and following that, in Italy, the police reported the case was denounced to the police, and the parents or either the company were fined, were imposed a fine. But the phenomenon of informal employment is known, unreported work, in other words. My mother-in-law has been working in Belgium since 1999. And right after the wedding that took place on the 3rd of October, she left with my father-in-law, may he rest in peace. They traveled to Belgium to work. And they've been working there without, so to speak, without having the right to work. And they did so until 2012 or 2013. I'm not sure what year that was specifically. So this phenomenon and how Moldovans and Ukrainians, because she was Romanian by nationality, but she came from Ukraine. So at that time, there would be no visas available for our citizens. They wouldn't be hired, and I think everybody is familiar with this phenomenon. So she and my father-in-law had to travel, not because they were having a very good life here, but they had 3 daughters. All of them were university students. 2 of them were university students, 1 was a school student, 2 of the daughters were married, and they needed to take care of themselves. They needed to be provided for, and unfortunately the salaries back then in Ukraine, for instance, where she was working as a teacher, so they would be given, instead of money, they would be given commodities such as vodka or buckwheat or some other consumables and commodities, so people wouldn't be paid in money. And out of the reasons, for the reasons that I've mentioned, she didn't want to share with me more information than she did, but I would like to assure you that she had available funds. And as I've also mentioned, as she mentioned, there is also after the father-in-law passed away in 2011, she has a who is helping her out financially, and she doesn't want to disclose the data related to that person, the data of that person, and they've had other income out of the sale of some real estate in Ukraine. They've sold land. There was even some parcels of forest that they were rented out. So from 1999, she was actually back in 2006. My father-in-law, that is, was only back to Moldova in 2006. 1996 after having left in 1999, and then my mother-in-law returned to Moldova in 2007. Now, I don't want to go further into the other parts of the questions about the apartment and so on and so forth. I will be providing the details when we get there, but I would like you to believe me when I say that around that until that time, she already had enough funds for the apartment and for helping us out and for helping out the other daughters who at that time were in Moldova, but later they too left, and now they are there where now they live and work legally. Well, if it wasn't for my parents and it wasn't for my parents-in-law, then I too wouldn't have been here right now sitting in front of you.
You are grateful for her help, right?
Well, at the end, I wanted to thank them, but now that you've asked me, I would like to say that I'm very thankful to them indeed to this day.
I have more or less the same question for 2014, and I think you may have more or less the same answer. But in 2014, according to this financial data, your mother-in-law had an income of approximately 10,000, and she donated 75% of this to your family. And again, we have no information on her expenses.
I would like to communicate something that I've also remembered since we talked about being grateful. On this note, I would like to thank her because my daughter has the name of my mother-in-law, and in addition to that, I would like to, well, I had an idea, but I lost it. I had a thought regarding... Well, actually, indeed, the answer would be similar. Oh, actually, I wanted to say that to this day, I mean, apologies, I'm a little bit nervous. I put that down as donation in order to avoid in the future some issues with regards to where do you have a house from, how do you support yourself, how can you afford making a living with that salary that back then was about 3,000, 4,000 lei, that is about 150 to 100 euros. So that's why I reflected them like this. But actually this was a way for my mother-in-law to contribute to the maintenance of the house. As I told you, we share that house. It's a common house of ours, and I will further provide more details on that. My father-in-law, I think I told you, and I persuaded you, I believe, because I provided information, evidence as to that, and witnesses and documents. And my mother-in-law has a place in the Doina cemetery where the father-in-law is also buried, so she has her eternity place booked there, so to speak. So she is going to, thinking that she's getting older and older, at some point she will return to Moldova and she will be spending her last days in Moldova. So those donations, it's not like they were, for instance, made on the occasions of birthdays, my birthday, the birthdays of the family members, of her daughter, of her grandchildren. She wasn't able to be there with them to raise them, and that is because of the circumstances, of the conditions as a result of, because both herself and her husband, who already passed away, they used to be teachers. I don't think it was easy for them to leave and to be there in Brussels on the canal waiting for someone to come over and give them day work, and they would be living together, 4 or 5 families in one single apartment, and they would be sharing 5 to 10 people would be sharing one room. So the conditions were terrible, and the way they even traveled all the way there, I don't even want to talk about it. If we were only to talk about that period of time when they managed to get their papers in order, and when Moldovans and Ukrainians were allowed to travel, to move freely around Europe, and to be hired, to be granted and allowed to use the right of labor. It would have been easier this time.
Get your point. Thank you, and also you have explained this in the earlier rounds of questions as well. It's taken, we've taken note of it. I have one more question, and this is on the year of 2019, and I wonder if there was something special that year, because your mother-in-law had at that year a much lower income than before. Her income was approximately 4,500 euros, and she gave most of it to your family as well. Was there a special reason why she didn't make that much money that year?
I've explained, and I will reiterate that in the fourth round of questions, I've provided some additional information. I have shared with the Commission a table, and in the table I put down all the correct or the accurate amounts regarding income and some income that the Commission found and what I've specified as a result of having another look at every year in particular. And I've also sent all the bank account statements again, structured for every separate year, in order to make it easier for the Commission to get around and understand them. So I would like to communicate that the income that was initially, but first I would like to say that initially it would have been very easy if I was asked by the Secretariat, for instance, if I was told, please share with us the bank statements, for instance. I didn't know what I was supposed to submit in terms of supporting documentation to the Secretariat. I didn't know what I was supposed to submit in order to persuade them.
To the question, Mr. Sirbu, please. Let's stick to the question. And am I to understand your answer that you're saying, have a look at the numbers that I gave?
If I may, though, if I may explain to make sure that it is understood. Initially, when I've sent, I think it was the second round of questions, I've sent all the statements the way I received them from my mother-in-law, from my close family members. That was all rather scattered, maybe chaotic, and some of them were in copies, and then I thought that I should send that to persuade the Commission that these people were actually there, that I'm not lying, and that they did have an income. When I saw that the Secretariat has looked into all of those amounts and checked them, I sent again the, as I've said previously, I've sent that table. And that table shows that in 2019, my mother-in-law had 17,000 euros, which is the accurate amount that is also supported by the supporting documentation. So it was not the 4,500 euro. I'm not sure you have the table. And therefore, the amount that she had available to make donations, that was about 8,000 euros, 7,936 euros. What is more, those cash outs I put down separately. I've made corrections in your table, but I've also put down separately some notes for myself. The cash outs in 2019, 7,320 euros. That was the amount of cash outs. So I disagree with the amounts that you've mentioned, and I've already sent all that information, and I hope you will have another look at it and you will perform some recalculations just to be convinced that I'm telling the truth.
That's what we will do. We'll look at your table. We will consider your table as a reply to my question. I'm going to move to the next topic, which is the source of funds for the savings. We have talked about this now at length. And the total amount in the end in 22 was. Is that correct? Is that what you had in savings at that time?
Yes, that is correct.
And is it also correct that you kept that money up to this year, I should say, cash at home?
That is correct. Up to this year, I did keep that amount of money in cash, as you well know already, I guess. The next question.
The next question is a logical one, because in 2024 the situation changed and you have put your savings in bank accounts, and I would like to talk to you about this a little bit more. In June and July 24, in a period of 6 weeks, you have opened 6 bank accounts with 6 different banks, and you deposited a total amount of €100 in these bank accounts. in 5 bank accounts, the amount was 10,000 or lower in one case, and in one bank account it was higher. It was 15,000. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
We noticed that, like I said, the last asset declaration that we looked at was in 22, but the money was higher than it was in 22 because there is a difference. You had in 22, or you declared, and in 24 it was. Where did the additional savings come from?
Apologies, I think I didn't understand the question. Is it that about the additional savings, the difference between the 50%, or is it in general about the money in the bank?
The difference.
This difference is reflected in the further declarations for 2023 and 2024 that has been shown as cash savings. For 2024 I haven't filed yet, but there was cash savings, and so that's where it came from.
Was that also donations, or was it savings in your household?
As I mentioned in all of the rounds, I was sometimes, well, it felt like all of my savings were coming from donations. It felt like that. And I've explained, and I will reiterate, that all the savings came from my salary, the salary of my wife, the childcare allowances, all of the income that was reported to the NIA, and the stipends, and the salary of the son who was declared until last year. He was a student. So in order to avoid some issues with the media, with some other external factors, so I was working as a prosecutor, I declared even my son's income. He was working in Denmark, and he was also getting a student stipend of 800 euros. So he had quite a high level of income, and I proved that he actually paid for his accommodation about 300 euros. He was living quite economically modest, and he also had some income, and that income was being accumulated together with the family income, because he was our child, and we were thinking of his future as well, to be able to provide for that future.
We have sent you questions on your stay of your son in Denmark. You have answered it, and we have no further questions on this. So. I'm going to go back to the bank accounts. In the last round of questions, you have given explanation on our question why you have chosen to put the savings in 6 bank accounts this year. And you have explained that there's a lack of trust in the banks in Moldova because several banks have collapsed in the past. You considered, therefore, that putting all your money in one bank would be risky. And this is why you chose to divide the money over 6 bank accounts. And since the introduction of a deposit guarantee fund in the banking system, which you have also explained, this also meant that you would recover at least part of the money when more of the banks went bankrupt. Is this correct?
Este foarte corect.
That is absolutely correct.
The Commission is aware of the law 160 of last year on the guarantee of the deposit in banks, which has come into force in October 23. Until 25, and now you mentioned it as well, however, the guarantee on the deposit is only up till 100,000 lei, and it will change in 25. Now the question is, why did you not make the deposit 100,000 leis? Instead of 200,000 leis, because then you would be covered completely.
I hope that in half a year the banks will not fail. The banks where I set deposits. And for these reasons, well, I don't know how else to explain it.
Oricum, până
Anyway, well, there are 2 or 3 months left, and you know, the society somehow knows when a bank is going towards bankruptcy. This is a small country where many things are known, especially when you work in such an area like I do.
There was one deposition in the series in 24 which was higher than 200,000 lei. Why did you choose to do one which was higher?
A fost o...
That was,
să vă zic așa, pare mi s-a fost chiar și primul depozit.
I think that might have been the first deposit that I made.
Să recunosc faptul, eu nici nu cunoșteam.
I have to admit, I didn't even know about the existence of this law. And when I made the deposit with the bank, I opened it, I was told that, look, there is this deposit guarantee fund, and it guarantees the amount of 100,000 lei, and starting 1st of January 2025, that threshold will be raised to 200,000. So, because of not knowing, I did that.
Now, if you did not know about the law when you made your first deposit, there must have been another reason why you made a deposit. Why did you decide to put the money in the bank?
I decided to put the money in the bank as a result of a second round of questions, I think. The secretariat kept asking me, do you have money, what are you doing, what's the purpose of the money? And I decided to do that in order to prove to the secretariat and to the commission that these are not just figures on papers, but they are real savings of my family. As long as my family exists, that's it, all the savings since 1999, when my family was created. This is what we saved so far. I have no other savings. And as you know, because we will get to the housing, you know, my housing was only changed until now, but I had it before I was hired into the prosecution service, both the housing and the car.
If I understand your answer correctly, the questions of the commission made you aware that it would be better to put the money in the bank because then it would be visible. Is that correct?
Foarte corect. Am vrut
That's absolutely true. I wanted to be correct towards the commission. I wanted to prove that it is true.
Adică m-a convins într-un
I mean, in a way, it convinced me to do this thing.
Oricum, riscul
Anyway,
persistă, după cum am spus.
There's a risk always, as I said. My parents, for instance, and my parents-in-law had accounts of tens of thousands of rubles in the former Banca de Economie saving bank before the collapse of the Soviet Union. So all that money, out of 10,000 rubles, they were left with 10 lei. And you understand that we, the citizens of this country, were the ones who lived in the Soviet Union. We had some fear of losing again all of our savings.
No, I understand. But I'm looking at the timing, and I'm looking at the fact that you have decided to put it in 6 different bank accounts. And when you made that choice, you were not aware of the guarantee fund yet. You just told us. Why did you decide to put it in 6 different banks? Was it...
Apropo, Mulțumesc, eu la
By the way,
întrebarea aceasta de la
thank
bun
you
început. Eu am decis
for
să-i
this
pun
question. I
banii în
decided
bancă
to
și mă
place the
gândeam
money in the
oricum
bank, and
era
I
în
was
capul meu
thinking,
de a
well,
pune
it
mai
was
multe bănci.
in my
Adică
head.
nu
I
era
was thinking about this, about putting
intenția
money
de a
in
pune
several
toți
banks.
banii, să mă duc
I
să-i
did
pun
not
pe
have
un
the
cont,
intent to
da?
put all the money into one
Dar
account.
intenția aceasta era de a
But
pune în mai
I
multe bănci. Dar când am
had
aflat cât
the idea of putting it into
garantează
several banks, but
fondul
when I
de
found
garantare a
out
depozitelor,
about
respectiv,
the
atunci am
deposit
decis
guarantee
că,
fund
uite,
and what's the amount
e
that
mai
they
bine să
guarantee, I
structurez
decided that it's better
după
to
cât-
structure it
după cât prevede legea.
by that amount that the law provides for.
Thank you. I'm coming to the topic of the documentation on the bank accounts, because the Commission has asked the banks for all the documentation on your bank accounts, and it turned out, and we've made a question out of it, that 3 of the 6 banks have asked you for the source of funds for your deposit. And in these forms, you have indicated that the source of funds for the bank account was your salary. We asked you why you declared salary as source of funds, and you answered that you had presented at each bank certificates on your salary, income, and all the asset declarations over 2013-2024. But you say you were told by the bank operators that the salary was a sufficient indication as a source of income, and bureaucracy, paperwork, would have been avoided this way. And you also said in your answer you had no intention to mislead anyone. Is that correct?
Foarte corect, absolut
Absolutely true.
corect. Eu pot să adaug,
I
adică
can
din
add,
considerentul că având în vedere faptul că economiile mele erau
given
toate
that
declarate
my
în
savings were all declared,
mijloacele financiare drept economie erau declarate în
all my
declarațiile de
funds,
avere și
the saving
interese
one,
personale.
were
le-am
declared
chiar
in
acum
the
aici.
asset declarations, and I have them
La 4
here.
iunie m-am
I think
adresat și am
on
primit
4th
de
of
la
June,
Autoritatea
I asked
Națională
and I
de
received from the
de la
from the
ANI.
National
Ce
Integrity
scuze.
Authority, not Investigation Authority.
Am primit
I
declarațiile
received declarations
cu ștampilă umedă,
with
adică pentru ca
ink
când mă duc
stamp,
la bancă să depun banii
so that when I
în
go to the
depozite, nici nu
bank
știam ce
to
acte
deposit,
trebuie
because I
pentru
didn't
depune
even know what
banii în
documents I
bancă,
would
să vă
need
spun sincer.
to place the money into
Și
deposits.
zic, o să prezint
And I said, I
declarațiile,
will show them
respectiv
the
o să vedem,
declarations
este indicat,
which
mijloacele
show
sunt acte oficiale,
all these
totuși,
funds, that all that
eliberate
money
de
was
autoritate.
official, because it would be a
Sunt
document
acte
issued by an authority. It's not
Și
just
zic,
a
prezint
mere
toate
simple
aceste
document.
acte în
So
felul,
I decided to
pentru a
have all
demonstra
these documents to be able to
operatorilor
prove to
bancari
the bank
proveniența,
operators what's the
pe
origin of
provin.
the money that.
Și respectiv le demonstram,
And
le arătam
I was
lor,
showing
uite, am
them, look,
și din
I
donații, am
have
și din
from
indemnizații, am
donations,
și din,
from some
burse și
benefits,
din,
scholarships,
salarii,
salary,
și având și certificatele sau extrasul
and I
din,
also had
M
the
cabinet
certificates,
cu mine.
the
Respectiv,
statement from
operatorii
M cabinet. I
bancari
had it
se
on me,
uitau și spuneau că
and the
asta
bank
nouă nu ne trebuie,
operators
ne
were
ajunge,
saying that all of it we don't need.
extrasul salarial,
Your
deoarece
salary
suma
statement
care
is enough
dumneavoastră
because
doriți
the
să
amount
depositați
that you
nu
want to
necesită,
deposit does not
acte
require
suplimentare.
additional
Respectiv,
documentation.
toate aceste
Therefore,
completări erau
all
făcute,
these
cum să spun,
additions, well, for the sake of doing
da,
their
cer
work.
scuze. Aceste bifi erau făcute de către operatorii
So all
bancari.
these
Eu
checks were
nu
like
știu dacă
were done
dar
by
nu mai ai
the
timp să
bank
citești
operators,
toate
but you don't
drepturile,
have
obligațiile și toate
time to read all the rights and
condițiile
obligations and the
stipulate cu
terms
mărunt
when
când
in
deschizi
fine
un
print
contract
when you open a
de depozit sau,
deposit contract or.
Nu a fost careva intenție de a duce
There
pe
was
cineva
no
în eroare,
intent
nu m-am
to
gândit
mislead
să
anyone.
mint cineva,
I did
adică,
not
dimpotrivă,
think
am
of
luat cu
lying
mine
to anyone,
declarațiile
just
ca
the
să
other way
demonstrez
around. I brought those
proveniența
declarations with
legală.
me to prove the legal origin of money.
I have a copy of those forms that you filled in from the 3 banks, and I would like to show them to you. Maybe I can have some assistance in that.
Eu pare să o cunosc, este unica
I
cerere
think
prima care
I know
s-a
this.
dat
This
din
was the
Yeah.
first one from Molding Bank.
Da?
Is that right?
I just would like you to check that it does say salary, although there's also the option of donations, and that you signed all those forms and that you declared in the last paragraph that your declaration was truthful?
Ca să mă repet sau nu știu cum.
Well, I will be repeating that. The bank operators said that salary was enough for me not to submit all the additional documents. And to make it quicker, I don't know how to explain. As I told you, I was able to present because I have all the confirmations from all my donors that I provided to the Commission. I could have provided them with all the documentation, but they said salary was enough, just check that box. And I did what they said, or I accepted the idea of not to make the situation more difficult.
You are a lawyer and you are a prosecutor. Should you not have thought about it a little bit longer before you signed?
Îmi pare rău că
I am sorry that
vreau să comunic că nu am avut
well, I just want to say that I did not have any ill intention.
Dar
but
altceva nu.
I don't know what else to tell you with respect to this. I will take this into account for the future. Thank you very much.
No, I'm not quite finished, and then I'll hand over the additional questions. Yeah. We talked about one deposit which was 15,000 euros. This is over the guaranteed deposit. But it's also exceeding the limit for a transaction which needs to be reported at the Office for Prevention and Fight Against Money Laundering. Did the bank ask you any questions on this transaction?
No, absolut deloc.
No, nothing.
And I have one final question, and that we noticed that one deposit was done electronically. You know which one I mean?
Pare mi se două chiar.
I think even two.
Can you explain how that works?
Te duci la bancă,
you go to the bank
să deschizi depozit.
And you want to open the deposit. The bank terms are the following. If you open the deposit
online, ai un procent mai mare
you
pentru
have an interest rate that is higher for that deposit.
Dumneavoastră vă este oricum, adică
and,
oricum banii
for you,
important
it
este să
doesn't
plasați și să aveți acest depozit.
matter which way. It's important that you place the money and have that deposit. So, as the operator guided me, in order to get a higher percentage,
condițiile, adică pentru deschiderea
conditions for opening a bank account digitally were better. But the deposit was opened within the bank, so I was putting the money into the cashiers, they were putting into a current account, and then it would be transferred onto the deposit account. That's how things were. It wasn't like done from home or otherwise.
These are all my questions over your financial activities, so I'll give it back to...
Thank you, Saskia. Let's see if colleagues have any questions about the bank accounts, the deposit accounts, and the financial resources, please. Mr. Prosecutor, a clarification question. Transfers from relatives. Did you ask the bank any confirmation? Did the bank ask you for any confirmation documents about transfers from relatives? Because the amount or the deposit amount was covered by your salary only. So when you were placing the deposit. No, as I said previously, the bank did not ask for anything. I showed them the declarations and I said that I can provide documents, transfers, confirmations. But they said it was enough because you and your wife, I think they didn't even ask for my wife's salary. The salary that you have allows you to have such an income. So, one more question. From what I understand, your relatives who made donations did that both in cash and wire transfers, or only one way? Mostly it was in cash. There were transfers, but well, to clarify, transfers were only partial. When my mother-in-law, let me describe it, my mother-in-law is a very correct person in her day-to-day life, and if she said she wants to make the transfer on that very specific day, that she will, what she will do. That was the reason why those transfers happened. After she made her stay legal in Belgium, but previously I asked and I attached questions from answers from Western Union and MoneyGram. Before that, until around 2012 or 2010 or 11, I had a lot of money received through bank transfers from my mother-in-law because she could not keep the money there. As I said, there were several people living together. There was a risk that they could be deported just any day. So I was receiving many transfers. Unfortunately, not being aware, I did not keep it. And I asked MoneyGram, and MoneyGram said that they don't keep the records for more than 7 years, and Western Union the same. Thank you for your answers. I'm asking questions in order to make sure about this deposit form. I'm interested in the transfers you received from your mother-in-law, from your relatives abroad. Did you receive them into a bank account and you picked it from the bank, or were they coming onto the card account that you hold with the bank or another? No, it was through MoneyGram, so it was this wire transfer. Well, last question. The deposits you opened, did you open them at banks where you previously received these transfers? I mean, I received from Western Union, but I was getting the money at the bank X, Y, or Z. And when I made the deposit, I decided to go to the bank X, Y, or Z, or to a totally different one. No, I did not. I was not following that idea. I don't even remember. I was going to the banks that were nearby. It wasn't strictly decided, go to this bank or that bank. Where it was convenient, that's what I will go. Thank you. I have no more questions. Thank you. Mr. Sirbu, I have some questions as well. Thank you very much for the details that you are providing, and please be calm. We don't accuse you of anything. We just want to have clarity about all the data that you provided and that we gathered in order for us to be correct in your evaluation. In the information that Madam De Vries presented, you have those deposit accounts that you mentioned, 5 accounts for a specific amount around 10,000 and 1 bank account with an amount that was bigger. You also mentioned that was your quote today, that you showed the bank operator several documents confirming the source of income, including the annual declarations from the National Integrity Authority with a stamp. I have them on me today, I can prove it. I want to know one thing. These bank accounts, did you open them all on the same date or close to each other? Then those documents to prove the source of income that was declared were, well, did you present the same set of documents for each of these accounts as issued on the same date or on different dates from the authorities that you requested from? And the operator, if you had several accounts in the same bank, was the same operator or different operators? So I just want some clarity. You opened one account, you show one set of documents, and they said, that's enough or no, only salary is enough. You open another account, you were asked to provide a confirmation of your income. You provided several documents, and only one was accepted because that was sufficient. Just in this way, to have some clarity about the documents that you provided.
vreau să
I
vă comunic că eu
want to
toate aceste
tell you
conturi de
that
depozit
all these
sunt toate
deposit
absolut la
accounts
diferite bănci.
are
Nu am niciun
all
cont
with
de
different
depozit, două
banks.
conturi de depozit la aceeași bancă.
I don't have
Deoarece
two
însă
deposit
fondul
accounts
de
with the same
garantare,
bank
după
because
cum am
the
spus, a
guarantee
depozitelor
fund, as I
garantează
deposit guarantee fund,
suma
guarantees the
de 100.000
amount
lei
of
sau de
100,000
200.000
lei or
garantează
200,000
la
lei
aceeași bancă.
for one
Din
bank.
aceste considerente, nu am
For
deschis
this
două
reason, I
conturi
did
la
not
aceeași bancă.
open two accounts with the
Respectiv,
same bank.
dacă dumneavoastră ați văzut acolo
So
careva
you-
mai multe conturi, merge
If you
vorba
saw there
despre
several
banca
accounts that,
la care, ca să nu facem publicitate,
not to
sau
make
pot să comunic,
advertising, or maybe I
merge
should
vorba
say.
despre banca
So
X, la care eu
it's bank
primesc și
X, for instance,
salariu,
where I
și
also receive my
respectiv,
salary,
și soția mea,
and my
la această
wife
bancă primește
gets
salariu și
salary in the
respectiv,
same bank.
la acea
And
bancă,
for
aveam
that
și un cont de
bank,
card
I
în
had
care
a
mi-a fost
euro
deschis,
card account that
la
was
necesitatea
opened
plecării în
when I
o
needed
deplasare de
to
serviciu
go on
ca
a
să-mi
business
poată
trip
returna
so that they could
mijloacele financiare.
reimburse me
Nu mă
the
țin minte cine a organizat
funds. I
asta,
don't remember who organized that. Was it US Embassy or something? With respect to the documents, was it the same set of documents confirming your income? Practically, yes. So do we understand correctly? 6 bank accounts that all together formed one amount, but the confirmation that was coming for each of the portion of the money that was coming into one was for the amount put into the deposit, or was the confirmation valid for the total amount for all 6 accounts?
Eu prezentam și declarațiile
I was also
mele privind
throwing my declarations, my annual declarations that confirm the funds, the source of funds, and that was issued by an authority. So besides that, I had with me the confirmations and
cum să zic,
what could I call them?
certificate de
Certificates of salary. And the operator was telling me, well, as I explained before, so it was enough. It was at operator's discretion to avoid certain situations, or what can I say, documents, bureaucracy. Thank you. Kindly. Let's see if the colleagues have any other questions about this.
We move to the car. I don't have that many questions about it, so I'll go quickly through the information that you provided. You bought a Volvo in 2016. You bought it for 160,000, and you bought it from your brother, and you sold it in 23, and you sold it for more than you had bought it for, considerably more. This is what you have said, is that correct? Yeah.
Desigur.
Yeah.
Yes, sure.
And I would like to say straight away, because this is one of the things that you have said in your statement, and we agree with that the sale price is in line with the market value at that time. And that brings us to the purchase price. In the first, or in several rounds of questions, you have explained that the car required investments when you bought it. You have given us a list of the reparations which were done on the car, but you have said, I do not have the documentation anymore. It's a long time ago. You also mentioned that the car was purchased slightly below the market price at that time due to the condition of the car, and that the previous owner had an urgent need to sell. And finally, you mentioned that the vehicle prices had increased over the years because of inflation. Is that correct?
Foarte corect.
Absolutely.
Now, my question is, did the fact that you bought the car from your brother have influence on the price?
Nici de cum nu.
No, not at all.
Să comunic mai departe.
Do you want me to tell more?
Yes.
ca să povestesc istoria acestui
to
automobil,
tell the story of this
ca să
car,
fie clar,
to
atât
make it
pentru
clear
noi, cât pentru
for
cei care
us
se vor
and
uita
for the
ulterior
ones
la
that will watch
În anul
this.
2016,
In
fiind
2016,
la serviciu, fratele meu
being at work,
lucrează
my
în
brother,
domeniul,
he
a avut și
works,
companii de
and well, he used to have a company
întreprindere de reînregistrare
of dealing with re-registration of
Adică
cars.
el, la moment, se ocupă tot, este broker de
He's
asigurări.
an insurance
Toată,
broker
practic,
today.
o bună parte a vieții
So
sale
a
este în
big
domeniul
part of his life is
legat
about
activitatea sa de domeniul transportului.
transport.
Majoritatea
And
automobilelor pe
most
care eu le-am
cars
deținut
that I
în viața mea
had owned in my
le-am
life,
avut în posesie cu drept de dispoziție și
that I had in
proprietate pe care le-am
possession or
raportat,
ownership
au fost
that I reported,
procurate, adică
they were all purchased spontaneously.
din considerentul că sau
Because
era prețul bun și era o
either the
ofertă
price
bună,
was
sau
good,
că
there
cineva
was
se
a
grăbea,
good offer, someone was in
din
a
vari
hurry
motive.
for various
Respectiv,
reasons.
Dacă nu țin minte, era luna februarie, nu
I
țin
don't
minte
remember, it
tare
was
minte.
February, I don't remember the
Fiind la
date.
serviciu, fratele
I
mă
was
sună
at
la
work, but
telefon
my brother called me
și îmi spune că,
and
uite,
told
este
me,
un
like,
automobil
look,
care
there's
îl
a
vinde
car,
un cunoscut de-al său.
an acquaintance of
La
his was
prețul de
selling
160.000
at the
lei.
price of
De aceea își luase
160,000 lei because
automobil, îi
he
trebuie
bought
de
another car
urgent
and
bani,
he
își-
needed money
vizual
urgently.
are unele,
And he
i-a
said that
comunicat că are
visually,
unele
he told me that
deficiențe, dar,
has some
în
deficiencies.
principiu, după prețul care
But
era,
looking at
era
the price,
acceptabil.
it was
Respectiv, eu am
acceptable.
comunicat că,
So
într-adevăr,
I
prețul era mai
said
mic.
that
Eu ce-am
the
făcut?
price was lower
Repede am
indeed.
deschis
What did I do then?
internetul,
I
nici nu cunoșteam cum
opened
arată
internet.
așa
I didn't
mașină.
even know how
Am
the
deschis
car of
internetul,
that model looked like.
m-am uitat că prețurile
So
erau
I checked in the internet, I
prețul care
saw
mi se
that the
oferea era
price
un
offered
preț
to me
extraordinar,
was
adică
extraordinary, good I mean.
și zic, fratele meu
And
având cunoștință de
my
de
brother,
mașini și eu având
having
încredere
knowledge
deplină
about
în
cars,
el,
and I fully trust
deoarece
him
este și,
because
nu mai spun,
Well, I'm
rude
not
și
saying
nănaș și toate celelalte, a
relatives
avut
and so on and so forth.
grijă și
He
el o bună
was
parte a vieții
like a
de mine,
godparent, so he took care of me, a
fiicelul meu
big
îi poartă
part
și
of
lui
my life,
numele.
and my son is
Pentru
called
concretizare.
the same name as he do, like his namesake.
I-am zis, dacă este
And
bun, ia-l
I
și
said,
eu de
well,
seară
if that's
ne-
good,
sau
take
mă cher zi,
it,
a doua zi
and
nu știu cum,
in
toate
the same
cheamă.
evening or next day we
Eu nici nu am
will
văzut
handle it.
acest automobil.
I didn't
El
even
l-a
see the
procurat pe
car.
numele
He
lui, l-a
bought it,
înscris.
recorded it,
Ulterior,
registered it on
a fost
his name,
înscris
and
automobilul pe numele meu
then
și
the
respectiv,
car was registered in
în
my
așa fel am
name, and in
ajuns
this
ca
way
să,
I
fie
became
acest preț și să-l procur la
to
un
have,
preț
well, I got to have
convenat.
that price and
Am
purchase it at a
prezentat
convenient
ulterior
price. And
atât
then
confirmări
later
la
on, I
fratele meu că
showed
mi-a dat
a confirmation
automobilul cu
from
acest
my
preț,
brother that he
dar
gave me
și
the car at that
confirmare
price,
de
and
la
also a confirmation
proprietarul care
from
i-a
the
vândut de fapt
owner who
automobilul
sold the car actually
fratelui meu,
to my brother.
prin care, pe lângă contractul
Because
prezentat
besides the
comisiei, care a
contract
fost
submitted to the
înregistrat
commission
la
that
SCP,
was
am
registered
prezentat și
with
o
the Public
confirmare
Services
înscris prin
Agency,
care
I also
dumnealui,
provided
eu
a
pot să vă dau
written
telefonul
confirmation. I can
dumnealui
give
la-
you his phone number.
să-l
You
solicitați,
could
să-l întrebați că,
call him and ask
într-adevăr,
him
acesta a fost prețul
that
automobilului.
it was indeed the price of the car.
Știți cum, nu știu cum să mai,
I
ce
don't know
trebuie să mai
what,
fac.
well,
Poate
what else
dacă
I
îmi dați
should
ceva
do.
concret,
Maybe
eu
you
pot să
tell me
mai
something
prezint
concrete.
careva
Maybe I
acte.
can provide you
Am
some other
prezentat la fel
documentation.
și,
Because
la
I
ultima rundă
also,
de
in the
întrebări,
last
confirmări
questions
de la
round,
persoanele
I
care
provided
mi-au
you
efectuat
confirmation
reparația acestuia.
from people who
I asked
repaired
you
it for
a
me.
question, you answered it.
Epuizez întrebările, să înțeleg.
Are you running out of
Răspunsurile
questions?
premature.
Or am I answering too early to your questions?
Mă faci să râd.
I'm just
Thank you, you make me laugh.
First, I'm going to see if there are additional questions, and then we move to the last topic.
Dacă colegii au
Mașina e
întrebări
gata?
referitoare
Are we done with the car? And Virginia was asking if there are any questions. Chairperson, do you have any questions?
Ok,
Dar eu am vrut să mai completez.
I just wanted to add more.
You made yourself clear.
E de ajuns?
Is
Eu am
that
vrut să
enough? I
completez
just wanted to add. I
răspunsurile
wanted
la
to
Simples,
question.
care demonstrează acest.
I wanted to answers from Simple.
Mr. Sirbu.
Vă mulțumesc frumos.
Thank you very much.
Okay. We move to the purchase of the house in 2010. And that is a complicated story. And I will start with a quote of what you have told us at the very beginning. You have said, this is the house and it's on S Street. I'll call it the house on S Street. Which was registered. Now it's registered in your name and the name of your mother-in-law, but at that time it was registered in the name of your brother. You have declared, this property has been indicated by me in the declarations of assets and personal interests for the previous years, being the beneficial owner, the right of possession, use and disposal and the power of attorney, together with my family members and my mother-in-law. The property is legally registered in the name of my brother, but we have seen, and you have also put this in your answers, that you have changed this situation, I think because of the questions from the Commission that made you aware that this was still in the name of your brother. That's my guess, is that correct? Yeah.
You helped me.
We don't hear that a lot. We have investigated your asset declarations for this declaration on beneficial ownership, and all the shapes of the asset declarations, they change over the years. So it was sometimes we had to look very hard, but we did see your identification number in some of the asset declarations in the column of beneficial owner. Is that how you declared it?
Well, I might have made a mistake. I can't say specifically now because I don't have the document right here. But considering how things were developing in the society, there were discussions about the wealth, the assets of prosecutors, and if I was the owner, if I had that right, I had this inner fear, though I had the right to make decisions about it. It's not in vain that my brother granted me this right. So even as I was a lawyer, I was thinking that if I tell someone the rights that I have over the car or over the house, and I declare that, for instance, saying that there's enough funds to purchase this, and I have all the documentation, all the receipts, and if everything is fine, and the documentation that is available proves of the fact that I'm not lying to anyone, I'm not lying to the authorities, and I am reporting things accurately. But I was somewhat afraid to specify that I was the owner, knowing of how this could be reflected in the newspapers and everywhere out there. But then when we've seen that, well, my mother-in-law was going to return and we were going to register the house on all of us, but then when we saw the questions of the Commission, and that was certainly one of the most important topics addressed, and she said, Valeriu, I will allow you and the daughter, I'm already old anyway, you can register yourselves as the owners, you can register the house on you. I know that I trust you completely, same as we've I trusted my brother, and there was not one thing. I mean, it's hard for me to put things into words, to explain it like this. Maybe you won't really comprehend it like that.
We will get to that. We will get to the history of this house. You have explained in earlier questions that in 2010 a decision was made by your family and your parents-in-law to buy a house together, to get a house together, so that your father-in-law could live with you. He was ill at that time, and while your mother-in-law still worked abroad. And both families were to sell their properties to get a suitable house, which you could share. And your in-laws had an apartment, and you had or a house, I'm not sure. And you owned an apartment at that time. Is that correct?
I had a house, a detached house with a land plot.
Okay. Is this correct, the way I sum up the history? Okay, yeah.
Yes, that is what it was like.
And then you found a house, and I'm going to call it a house in S Street, and that was to be the residence of all of you. And the owner was I'm going to call him Mr. D. You have stated that in order to get the house, the apartment of your family at B Street was to be exchanged for the house in S Street, owned by Mr. D, and that an additional payment needed to be made of 30,000 euros because they were different in value. and your parents-in-law would pay the extra 30,000 euro. Is that correct?
Da.
Okay.
Yes.
This contract was signed on July 15, 2010, and in that contract you sold your house for, I think it was approximately 18,500 euros. You sold it to Mr. D. Is that correct?
Nu cunosc prețul care a
I
fost
don't
indicat în
know the
contract,
price that was put
acesta
down
a
in the
fost unul,
contract
să spun,
because
limitat,
that
sau un
contract
contract
was
limitat, fictiv.
a fictive
Dar,
contract.
de fapt, a avut loc un schimb
But
și
actually there
nu
was
era
an
important prețul
exchange,
indicat
and the
în
price
contract.
that was in the
Dar
contract
așa a
didn't
fost
matter.
decizia atunci și probabil.
But that's the decision we took back then. So I guess I don't
Prețul
know.
nu-l cunosc.
I
Dacă
don't
spuneți
know the
dumneavoastră că
price.
este
If you
corect,
say that
dacă
that's the
aveți
price,
contractul.
then I guess that is accurate since you have the contract there.
The contract says that this was the price, and the contract also says that the purchase price was paid when the contract was signed. But you say it's a fictive contract.
Da, imitat. A fost contract imitat, deoarece, de fapt,
Yes, it was a fictitious one because at the end of the day there was an exchange, and that is confirmed by the receipts that were also annexed there on that same date, and they were written by Mr. D and by myself.
I will get to the second contract because then the second contract is a donation contract. And that's a donation contract of this house between Mr. D, and he donated it to your brother. And in this contract there is no mention of the 30,000 euros, nor is there in the first contract. Is that correct?
Foarte corect.
Yeah.
Foarte corect.
That is absolutely correct.
Now, who suggested to do the transaction like this in two contracts?
Să întorc pagina înapoi.
Well,
să știu
if
ce
I
mă
were to
așteaptă,
look back,
nu
had I
aș
known
fi
what
făcut,
awaited me,
cred că, în felul
I
acesta.
wouldn't have done things this way.
Dar atunci
However,
vreau să vă
back then,
aduc aminte că
I have
socrul meu era foarte
to
bolnav
tell
și
you,
stătea-
to remind you
avea
that my
o
father-in-law
problemă la
was
plămâni
very ill.
și se
He
înăbușea.
had a
El
lung
intra în
problem,
panică
so
și
he
eu eram
was
nevoit,
losing air. He
practic,
wasn't
în
having
toată seara
having
să
enough of
alerg
it. He
la
would
el.
panic, and I would have to
După cum am
go to
demonstrat
him
prin
every night.
extrasele,
As I've shown, I provided those
medicale, prin fișele
medical
medicale, dumnealui era
records.
grav bolnav,
He
după cum s-a
was in
văzut
a
și a
very
decedat
bad
peste jumătate de an,
situation,
adică,
and he
practic,
passed
de la
away half a year
schimbul de
later,
locuințe.
after having changed, half a
Soacra
year
mea
later after
era
we've
conștientă de faptul
made
că
this exchange.
boala se agrava.
And my mother-in-law was
Practic,
well
nu mai
aware
venea din
that
spital
his
și
illness was growing
iarăși
worse. As
se
soon as he would
ducea,
be
chemam
back
salvarea
home
și
from
se ducea
hospital, we'd
înapoi
call
la
the
spital. Eu aveam
ambulance
grijă
to
cu
take him back
soția mea de el.
to the hospital. I and my
Soacra
wife were
mea
taking care
a
of
fost
him,
cu ideea
and
de
my
a efectua
mother-in-law
schimbul
came up
acesta
with the
de
idea
case,
to make this exchange
de a locui
of
împreună
houses
și
and
de a-l
to live
ajuta pe el ca să
together
fie
and to
mai
help
ușor să
him out, to
suporte
be there for him, to
aceste,
help him
spunem,
go
ultime
through
zile.
that experience through his
Respectiv,
last
în acea perioadă,
days,
după cum am
practically.
menționat, atât
And
fiicele
in that time, both
mamei
the daughters
soacre,
of
cât și
the
ea se aflau
mother-in-law
în Belgia,
and
unde
herself,
nu
they were
aveau
in Belgium.
posibilitatea de a
And there,
reveni în
well,
orice
at the time, they didn't have the
clipă în
possibility
Moldova.
to return at any
Mai mult
moment
ca atât,
in
vreau să
time to
menționez,
Moldova.
fiicele nici la
What is
mormântarea
more,
tatălui
the
lor,
daughters
ambele
were
fiice
not
nu
even
au putut
able to
veni
attend
din
the funeral
considerentul
of
că
their
nu aveau
father
actele în
because
regulă
they
și
didn't
dacă
have
veneau,
their
nu puteau să
documents
plece
in order.
înapoi.
And if they were to
Chiar
return
deja
to
la
Moldova,
acea
they wouldn't have been
etapă,
able to go
fiind
back
una
to
căsătorită
Belgium. And
cu
at that time,
un
one of them was
cetățean al
even
Belgiei.
already married to a Belgian citizen.
Pentru noi cunoaștem toți că în
We
cazul în
all
care
know
decedează un
that
proprietar,
if one of the owners passes away, then
problemele cu moștenirea.
the
Respectiv,
inheritance
soacra
issues
a
have to be
zis,
addressed.
haideți
So
că să nu scriem.
the
Puteam să scriu,
mother-in-law
desigur,
decided,
că
I mean, I could
din
have
start să scriem pe mine,
have
dar
written
într-un fel
or
oarecare,
registered
nu
that
știu ce
house as
pretexte
belonging to me.
invocat ea,
But I can't remember very well what she told the father-in-law, some reasons, but they decided that let's initially register that house as belonging to Ion, my brother, who was a person we trusted and who is my marriage godfather, so that when she returned to Moldova at some point in the future, he would then donate it or transfer or sort of sell it to her on the basis of a sale and purchase agreement to us. That was the agreement to us. At that time, the mother-in-law was much younger, and she realized that the days of my father-in-law were counted. So that was a common decision at the end of the day, and my brother agreed with this, and that person, Mr. D, agreed with this, and that is proven by those receipts that were drafted on that same day, and those amounts that were transferred as overpayment. That couldn't have been in the donation contract that was for my brother, the donation contract. That couldn't have been the case if there was against a payment. That couldn't have been put down in the contract. So that is the reason why it wasn't. And what is more, why a sale and purchase agreement was not drafted, but why was it a donation agreement? That is because we didn't want to make it more cumbersome, because we know that if there is a donation agreement, then it means that you transfer something into the ownership of person X, that is the brother. So although he's married to his wife, he is the 100% owner of that asset that was donated to him. So for that reason, we didn't have a sale and purchase agreement, but we went for a donation agreement. That was the decision that we arrived at back then, and perhaps we should have thought through things better. Maybe we should have thought of other contracts, agreements that could have been more suitable. But what is certain is that I've never hidden it away. I have always had this power of attorney that allowed me to make decisions about the house. I and my wife, that is, and my mother-in-law didn't need one because she trusted us 100%. I've never hidden it. I've always reported it. I've confirmed by letters and neighbors and a recent confirmation, for instance. Now, for the fourth round, I've taken one from the former owner, Mr. D. He confirmed that, yes, this is what things were like. This is how things happened. What is there not to understand? You see, it's easier for us to comprehend these details, but maybe not that easy for the much esteemed commission. And I hope that you understand that I had no intention. At that time, I didn't know that in the future there would be a vetting procedure, that I would have to explain in public these details, these situations.
I'm a bit lost by your answer, to be honest, because now I understand that it was your idea to have these two contracts. One of you buying the house, and on the other hand, the donation contract. Or you selling the house to Mr. D, and on the other hand, the donation. This was something that the family decided on, not Mr. D. You and your family decided to do it this way. Is that correct?
The idea came from my mother-in-law. But what she was interested in is for the asset to be registered on the name of my brother, but not about the paperwork in terms of, was it a donation agreement? I mean, she was not that much into it. So we made a spontaneous decision together. We've had a discussion together, and that's the decision we arrived at.
Can I ask you why the house was not donated to you and your wife?
I explained, but I will reiterate that if it was on my name and on my wife's name, it would have been donated to us, then you see that would have been a discussion with a person who was severely ill. But discussion not with me, but I mean the decision of my mother-in-law. I mean, she talked to my father-in-law. So she told him that first we will register this on the name of the brother of Valeriu, and then when I am back to Moldova, we will register the house on all of the four of us when I will be home, and then this donation will be made to us, to the four of us. So she couldn't tell him, look, my dear husband, I'm not sure how many more days you will be living on the face of the earth, but then how will we be handling the inheritance issue? She didn't know whether she would be legalized there in Belgium or not. Would she get Belgian citizenship or not? Would she be able to travel freely? She didn't know what to expect of the future, and that when you look back at that, they didn't have the documentation, the proper documents, and how hard it was to get even there. So it's very hard, to be even painful to think back about that experience.
I'm sure my colleagues may have some questions as well, but I'm going to close with one question, with one observation, Mr. Sirbu. The way this transaction has been structured means that there's nowhere in any contract a mention of the payment of 30,000 euros.
Only in those receipts, and indeed not anywhere else. Thank you, Saskia. Any other questions from our colleagues? Well, then, Chairman, do you have any questions?
No, no other questions.
I have a question, a follow-up question to clarify. Same as Saskia, I too got a little bit lost in these transactions. I should say it's a bit of a more complicated case indeed, generally speaking, but I do understand the realities and the situations that one might go through in one's life, especially our generations. So I would like to know what was the logical reasoning, the judgment for the parents to make a donation to your brother. He is a third party to your parents-in-law, generally speaking. And why wouldn't they have donated it or registered it to one of the daughters? Why would they donate this to a stranger at the end of the day? Honestly speaking, it's hard to explain, especially in current days when brother and brother are not. I mean, you were saying this. It's hard for us to understand too, you mean? Our relationship is a little bit different than the relationship of others. In my practice, there was a situation when the sister was in Italy, she had sent money and an apartment was bought. So out of her money, an apartment was bought and the apartment was registered on her sister who was living in Moldova. When she returned, the sister refused to re-register the apartment on the actual owner, the one who's actually given the money for the apartment to be bought. So there were complaints, there were criminal cases. I mean, I am aware of the fact that it is very hard for people outside of the family, of my family, to understand this. I understand that it's hard to grasp this, but my mother-in-law, well, she realized that. And by the way, I would like to mention that in 2003 I was asked about it, but I would like to clarify this for the general public. How the mother-in-law transferred the money to me in 2003 and how I bought the apartment that I've registered in my name, and then I transferred it to her in 2007 when she returned to Moldova. So that was based on the level of trust, based on the trust that we had. She knows how I think, and she knows how I am. She knows I'm very close with my brother. As I said, he is my marriage godfather, and my son has his name too, and she knows about our relationship, and she totally trusted us. And I told her, what she thought it was that if it was on Valeriu and Ruslana, then what if the father-in-law would have thought, what if then this house wouldn't be registered then back on everyone, or we didn't want him to realize that we all thought that he was going to die soon. But it was donated and not so long ago by to the brother, so that only shows that there was no intention. There was no intention for any violation to be committed. Maybe the decision wasn't the best one to be made. But that's how things happened, and now I can't change anything in the past. And the amount that is referred to in the receipt, I'm not speaking about the transfer, the bank transfer, but from a person to another. It only appears in that particular receipt, right? Because there can't be an amount as such in a donation agreement. So it's not written anywhere and reported to a body. It's only to the two parties to the agreement, or the two parties that are mentioned in the receipt, that is. Any other colleagues? Chairman?
No other questions.
Dar acestea au fost ultima speță, yes?
Well, this seems to have been the last block of questions.
Deci a fost ultimul subiect pentru discuție. Aveți cuvântul, domnul președinte.
Over to you, Chairman. That was the last matter to address.
Certainly. Mr. Sirbu, that concludes the questioning, and I'd now like to give you an opportunity to make a closing statement.
Vă mulțumesc mult pentru acest cuvânt de
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity for these final remarks. I did not specifically get ready for this, but I would like to say that this process is very complicated. Had I known 22 years and a half back about it, I think I wouldn't even gotten a job I wouldn't even applied for a job in the prosecution service if I knew that I would have to be put through this experience. I decided to remain in the country thanks to my parents, my daughter, as I said. She's the only one who is in the post-Soviet space. As for my son, well, I was supposed to take care of the parents. My older brother is also in Belgium, and all his family is there. And by the way, they also moved there thanks to my mother-in-law and thanks to my contribution as well, because there were many questions as to why did they decide to give you those gifts and make those presents. Well, as I said, I've mentioned that I've named my children in the names of different people, so there are people who have and feel a lot of gratitude and show that gratitude. So I would like to thank my parents and parents-in-law, my mother-in-law, the father-in-law, may he rest in peace. I'm not sure there's a point to thank him now. I would like to thank all the relatives who have helped me out in this process, and I hope I was duly and properly understood by the members of the Commission. I have always liked fairness, correctness. I've never had the intention to mislead the Secretariat or the members of the Commission. And after this process, I would like to underscore that my son, who is in Denmark, I'm not even sure he is coming back. Given the questions that I was asking him, I'm not sure he'll ever, well, he's coming back to Moldova anymore. He wouldn't want to go through hardships like this. There were times when, well, if it wasn't for my parents, as I've mentioned, who helped me with everything, all those goods from the countryside, and they're 83 years old, and they continue to work to this day, and I just can't make them stop and rest and stop working. And my mother, she had a heart attack. She had 7 to 8 surgeries, but she continues to work to this day, and she just won't stop, although she's retired already. So she's doing her best, not for their own sake, practically. They're trying their best for the sake of their children, to have something to give them when their children visit them. Until 2016, as that was also stated by high-ranking officials from the country, such as prosecutors general. Until 2016, a prosecutor, for instance, was getting a salary in a family with 2 children. With that salary, it was impossible to make a living. It was not only about living, but making ends meet was very difficult. So, I am therefore very grateful that I made it to this moment. But I would like to also say that all my youth, I have devoted it to my work in the prosecution service. And should it happen that I won't pass, if I fail to convince the Commission about the fairness of my steps throughout the years, then, well, I'll see what I'll be doing after that, but I hope for fairness, I hope to be understood. Although in certain situations, I admit that I acted in a way that at first sight might look dubious, especially in the eyes of citizens who haven't lived in this post-Soviet area. Thank you for your attention.
Mr. Sirbu, thank you for your participation in this evaluation process and today at the hearing. The Commission will now deliberate on the matter and issue its decision in the coming days or weeks, and I will declare the hearing to be closed. Thank you again.
Mulțumesc mult.
Thank you too.